Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Jay Davis Show. I'm super excited to have Lisa Baronoff with us today. She is the founder and CEO of Walkie Paws. Thanks for coming on the show, Lisa.
Thank you, Jay. Thanks for having me in Stir Fry. I don't know how long
Yeah,
to stay. Try and have him for as long as possible.
we've got her golden doodle stir fry with us as well. So if there's some barking, people will understand. Lisa, why don't you start just by telling us, how did you start Walkie Paws? What was kind of the impetus of wanting to go down this entrepreneurial path? Have you been an entrepreneur before all that stuff?
Yeah, it's a long story. I, for many years, was in corporate America between Revlon and... You want to go downstairs? Okay, here you go. I worked for Revlon for a year or so, and then for Mattel for about 10 years. And for Sarah Lee Hosiery back in South Africa for about 7 years. So I've been corporate with doing marketing and, everything that in marketing involves. And then I was late with having children. I landed up starting to have my kids at the age of 40. And I left Mattel when I had my daughter. And I was a mom for a while. And then I realized that just was not for me. I loved being a mom, but it was, just a lot of going to the gym and lunching. I needed some stimulation, do something. And an idea came to me. It was in 2015 in the winter in New York. It was snowing, and my dog at the time, I had a Cocker Spaniel. His name was Toffee, and he got really sick. And the vet said it was from ingesting the snow melt chemicals, from like licking his paws after a walk.
Oh, yeah.
We just, when it snows or after the snow, just put boots on him. And I was like, what? Boots? Dogs? Boots? I had no idea. I didn't know about boots and dogs. I ordered boots, 1 pair, 2 pairs, maybe like 10 pairs through Amazon and pet stores and whatever. And they all had the same 3 problems. They were very, very hard to get 4 individual boots on the dog. And then when you do get, they've got to be tight around the ankle to stay on. If you think about it, it's like a shoe, so it's got to stay on. And then invariably what would happen is we go for a walk in the snow, we come back and I'd be missing a boot. And we have to buy a whole nother lot of boots. So because I had experience in marketing and I had, worked for a company that did hosiery, had this crazy idea one day, and I came back and I put Toffee in a pair of pantyhose. I kind of tied the front on his front paws over his back, and the back ones on his back wasn't tied in a big knot on his back. And I had this idea to create a legging that would be attached to a booty so they'd stay up and they'd all be connected together. So it would be like a system. So I could show you, I have a little doggy model here since my other dog disappeared. So that's basically the idea. It's like a dog boot down there, and then it attaches, above the back. So I sort of ran with that, developed that. There was also at the time like a really big trend towards humanization, which there still is, where people are doing that's what they want to do for themselves, and towards looking to pets as their babies. So the whole idea of like dogs being able to wear leggings, like you wear your exercise Lululemon leggings, your dog can wear their leggings too. There was like a fashion component to it, and then there was the whole problem-solving functional component. And I have to say, it was, I guess I was very lucky. I launched in 2018 in November, and it just took off. It was on Amazon. I think the press got hold of it, and they had a field day, you can imagine, with leggings for dogs. Like, what are people doing now? Like, it was just kind of crazy. Great item. It was snowing a lot that year, so there was a lot of need for something like this. So I kind of got lucky with that, and landed up patenting the product and, creating a whole new category sort of in the pet apparel industry, because there were dog boots, dog shoes, maybe dog socks, but no one had done a dog legging. So that was like, really, really fun.
That's amazing. What a great story. It's often just amazing to me. Almost every entrepreneur I meet, it's always some problem that they saw and they said, I think I could solve that. That's something I can handle. That's amazing. What are some of the lessons you've taken, positive lessons as well, from being in the corporate world? I mean, you were working on some of the biggest brands in history, Mattel, Revlon. What were some of the things that kind of crossed over, and what were some of the things that did not cross over?
Yeah, very interesting. Well, the thing that doesn't cross over is when you're running your own business, especially when you're like a one-woman show, you're doing everything. So I then in my own business was doing all the things I'm not good at, as well as the things I'm good at. Like when I was in the world, I was doing marketing, and that I'm good at. I'm creative. I've got good ideas for packaging, new product development, anything to do with product and marketing. But I never had to deal with the finance and the accounting and the operations and the bringing the stock in from, China or wherever it was. Someone else dealt with that. So it's kind of a totally different way of working. You kind of are doing it all, which is fun and not so fun. In a way, it's fun because you have insight into the entire business. So you kind of know the way it all runs, which is fun instead of just having one piece of it. And the way it's not so fun is there's a lot of the stuff I'm doing I don't really love and I'm not so good at. So I try and outsource that. And that's probably been one of the trickiest things with doing it on my own, is trying to find the people to sort of help me, because I'm not a huge company. I'm sort of like growing fast, but a fairly small company. So you don't have those huge resources to have a whole, back room set up for, So it's kind of a lot of trial and error in trying things, and they work or they don't work. And just really finding the right team to build around the business is, I think, really, really important.
Yeah, going into that, I think that's one of the really challenging aspects of being an entrepreneur. What have you learned about hiring a team? What are some of the things that have worked, not worked? I think that's something, especially when you go from kind of those early days where you are doing everything and then you start saying, I can't wear every hat.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you've learned and put into practice?
I guess I've actually learned a lot about myself. I've learned that I'm not so good at letting go. Unfortunately, I kind of am a type A person, and it's my baby. So I sort of want to be involved in everything. So bringing people on, it's been a little tricky because it's like scary for me to say, this is it, go off and run with. But I'm trying to learn how to do that. And I've learned that a big thing for me that did not work and has not worked and is a source of pain is working with ad agencies. I think that is a disaster. Absolute disaster. I think now with AI coming into the mix, there's going to be even less of a need for ad agencies. I can't even tell you, I think I get 10 or 12 cold calls a day about agency or email people or SMS. And in the beginning, I was so flattered. I was like, wow, they're reaching out to me. Remember, it's just like an email list that goes to everyone. And I did, because they're wild promises made. They can increase your ROI by whatever, and they can, turn things around. And a lot of them actually make promises that if you don't make money, you don't have to pay them. So it's kind of very enticing to go with these companies. And I've done that 2 years in a row in my fall, winter season, and both with lackluster results, and just finding once you get into these ad agencies and on their books, you sort of just a pig in the wheel, and then they don't really care. They've worked you on, they've signed you up. The person who signed you up was amazing and promised all these things, but then you're sort of in, and then you're basically on Asana or some sort of software that you just, they're sending you a thing to look at, and you can't get them on the phone, and it's just, So that I would say I've now gone towards using individual people to help me, like a person who's an expert in SMS, who is still outsourced, but it's not an agency, so to speak. Because the other thing with an agency, I got really burnt 2 years ago. I was with an agency, I won't mention the name, and I started working with their email guy in November, and great, and he seemed fabulous. All of a sudden, he left the company. So all of a sudden, he's gone. They, I don't think, could bring anyone else in, so they kind of palmed walkie paws off onto the group, and no one had time for it. And it was a disaster. And then I was like, well, then can I just get my money back? Can I use someone else? And they're like, no, you signed a contract. I'm like, yeah, I signed a contract, but not, knowing that the person who's going to be helping me was going to be gone and no one would replace him. So there are all these things you don't realize when so it sounds, I think, from a marketing point of view, for people who are new to all of this, it sounds all very exciting and enticing that they can grow your business in such amazing ways. And they're all very persuasive, I should say. But I've learned that that's just not the way to go. And I've spoken to a lot of small entrepreneurs who haven't had success, with any agency, so to speak, either. So that's one piece of advice. And I guess one other big piece of advice, which was really more in the beginning of doing this, is not to listen to friends and family and what they just don't listen to them. I had a very good friend who's adorable, she's a very close friend of mine. When I was thinking of the idea of walkie paws, I was right in the beginning, and she has a little golden doodle, like my dog's. And she sat across the table from me, and I showed her the idea. And she's like, I would never put my dog in that. She was like, never, never. It's not an idea for me. I would never do it. And, I launched it. It did really well. And now guess what? She's putting her dog in it. Her dog's, in the winter, having her dogs in it. So it's you've got to really go with your own gut feeling, and you can't listen to naysayers and, that sort of thing.
I love that. So I want to dive into both of those things. So I think on the friends and family, one of the interesting things I've noticed is often that person, I'll ask them, are you an early adopter usually? Because that tells me so much. Like when someone's like, oh no, I'm like a very late follower, like late adopter, then I'm like, well, then of course you're not going to like this, because this is a new idea that no one's ever done before. So yeah, you're going to hate it. But I also think that's such a great point that a lot of times people can't see your vision. I think that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, is all of a sudden you're in charge of this company and it's like, okay, now we got to follow my vision. How have you learned how to communicate that, but also hold true to that? Because I think it can be lonely as a CEO. It can get very like, hey, we're all believing me, and some people stop believing you because there's a difficulty or some challenge comes up. What have you learned about that process?
Yeah, it's funny you say it's lonely, because it actually is lonely. I mean, I thought for many years of bringing someone in to help me, and I love that, someone who would be like a partner, skin in the game, but it's finding that partnership is really tricky, because, you can make a big mistake with that. So I haven't so far brought anyone in, but I think it is a great thing if you do have someone in the business with you, especially doing the skill set you're not good at, to balance what your functions are. So I am still doing it all by myself. I've sort of, I don't know, what have I learned? I've learned that it's sort of like a gut feel with people, and you have to be on the same wavelength as them. And, some people get it and some don't. I work a certain way. I can't explain it. I don't know that it's good or it's bad. I just am what I am. And it be well with some people, and some people it just doesn't. It's just not a good fit. So again, it comes down to finding the people that are a good fit. And I think giving them also responsibility. So I've had to let go and say to people, you do this, and try and not look at it too much, and just maybe look at it once a month and not get too involved. Because I think I can drive people crazy, like sort of getting in the weeds. So I'm trying to not do that. And just also planning ahead now, looking to plan ahead. I tend to be like a last minute person, and you can't do that in e-commerce, especially when you're relying on fourth quarter. So last year I had a lot of goods that literally came in like December 1. They like hit the shelves, not the shelves, but hit my Shopify shelves, so to speak. So I'm trying to really just get more ahead of the curve.
I love what you said about being yourself. I think that's something that's so tempting. And that even goes back to your point about getting the emails from people. You're getting all these like, I'll blow this up and I'll do this and I'll totally change your life. And after a while, you're like, wait, I'm seeing success with the way I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to get in that like kind of grass is always greener mentality, where someone comes in and I've made that mistake where our ad buyer at one point was amazing and they were crushing, but then I got enticed by someone saying, oh, there's all these mistakes they're making, and I was like, oh, okay, well, let's try this new thing, and it went horribly.
Right.
And I went back to that person who I'd been working with, and it was a good learning experience. But I love what you said about just being yourself, because I think there's constant pressure from potential investors, from employees, partners to be like, why can't you be more like this?
Yeah.
And it's like, but that would also mean getting rid of the things that are great about me. If Lisa's great at being, this attention to detail visionary, you might lose all that if you try and change everything, all the negatives, so to speak, of what comes along with that.
Yeah, very true.
So as you've talked to people, I mean, I think also going back to what you had said about constantly getting pitched, how do you kind of sort through all that? How do you find even the individuals? You said you've kind of shifted more to individuals than the bigger agencies. How have you kind of found those people? Have you searched them out? Because I said the other day to one of my partners, I was like, dude, isn't it funny after 4 or 5 years with some of our brands that so much of it is just finding the right group of people to work with? And that's like 90% of it.
Yeah. It's 100% true. From what I don't really use any, employment, anything, agency, anything. I really go more by recommendations from people. So it's like through people that I've met people, and things have sometimes just worked kind of uncannily in a good way. Like for argument's sake, when I started developing the walkie paws, I needed to develop a doggy boot. So this bootie here had to be water resistant, waterproof. And it was like, what fabric is that going to be made of, and so on. And I had a company in the fabric district in New York, working on this for me, and they were charging a fortune of money. It was like just racking up to tons, and nothing was really getting done. And they had a way, before I developed the rubber, they had a way of doing like a fabric that would be sealed off or some idea. And they said, and I'd met Rich, who was the guy who dealt with the factory, and they said, Rich can do that and whatever. And when I got the next bill, I said to this woman, Jamie, this is just far too expensive for me, and maybe what I should just do is work directly with Rich. And she looked across the table at me and gave me this very interesting smirk, I should say. And later on, I found out that Rich would not work with me because I was not working with her. So it's all a big game, right? You've got to be in the game. Like, not paying her the big bucks and he's not, it's like a thing. And because of that, I kind of had to take a step back and figure out, what am I doing? How am I developing these boots? And I knew ultimately I'd have to go to China. And through a friend of a friend, I had someone, a young lady in China who had just been laid off, who did sourcing, and reached out to her. Her name is Kath Lee, and had an incredible relationship with her in China. And she helped me develop these boots. And it turned out to be far more efficient than what I would have done in New York, much cheaper. And I loved working with, directly with her. So things just sometimes just happen fortuitously and you just can't even explain it. It's just, I think a lot of it is luck. It's like being in the right place at the right time and just knowing when to seize the moment as well, knowing, what to do. So I think what I'm really looking at now with the business is it's dog boot leggings, which solve that problem. But what I'm seeing now is the brand is more than that. It's like a whole dog walking experience. So what this is fashioning fun and functional dog walks. So we're expanding into other products that complement just the leggings. So other products that actually we're looking at launching in December and get them in time that are for adults to wear. So anything that would be involved in a dog walk would be a potential walkie paws product. So I think that's a very exciting direction to go in as well, to expand, because you already have a consumer base and you have a brand name and you get people to your website. And then if you can convert them into more products than just a dog legging, they could get a dog legging and a dog leash and a dog coat and a dog raincoat. And I can't mention what the products are because I haven't launched them yet. But these two really innovative products that humans would actually wear that would make the dog walk much more fun and much more functional. Then, you realize that's a way to really leverage what you already have, because you've got to build up what you're doing in order to grow. And another thing that's come up with dog leggings is they really rely on fit, because a dog legging has to fit a dog's paws and and although our product's adjustable, there's a little thing here that you can adjust it. I'll move this so you can see, but you can adjust it up and down to make it this. I'm not doing the best job here, but this could fit a much taller dog, the same pair of leggings. Even within that, we still have 5 sizes, and the dogs has to fit both the paw and the height measurements. And people don't measure their dogs, so there's a lot of preference for sizing. So the direction I'm moving in, still always going to do the leggings, and they do great, and people love them. But branching out into some new products that are less sized, that have less size requirements, more of like a one size fits all, or a no sizing product that doesn't rely on sizing, which would be, great. Just to have one thing, like one of them, a little thing we've just launched called a bark pack. It's just like I've got it here. It's just like a tiny little doggy backpack. So yeah, it can attach to a Pro, and it can attach to your leash, and it can attach to a dog's harness on his back. But it's literally one thing. It's a black, bark pack, and that is great in terms of SKU control and in terms of, returns and people knowing what they get, etc. So, yeah.
It's funny how, as an entrepreneur of a product company, you start thinking about SKU count all the time.
Yeah.
Everything you think about, you're like, how many SKUs is that going to be? Because I don't want another 20. And that's, I think, another, to your point earlier, friends and family, friends will throw out these ideas and you're like, you don't understand. Yes, in theory, it's great to have 5 sizes and 50 colors. From a SKU perspective, that's a nightmare. And so you're constantly trying to balance, like, what do customers want, which is good feedback, but then how do I balance the business side and the business's perspective on that, which is a lot of times what customers want is just impossible. It's like, that's not reasonable. But I was also going to say, I think I don't have dogs, as a non kind of dog person, there's nothing worse than when a dog jumps on you and gets like mud and dirt and crap on you. And so that's such a great idea. I mean, it's such like well, we all wear socks and shoes so that we don't track mud into our house and our friend's house. Same thing.
Well, I think that became even more, with COVID, people were even more focused on all of that.
Yeah.
In the beginning of COVID, we were all like wiping down our packages. And that's when people were even more aware, wow, our dogs are like walking outside, stepping and stuff, and walking into our apartments and jumping in our beds and sleeping with us. So there was more of an awareness of that whole thing. And there'd been a lot of articles written about what you bring in on the bottom of your shoes, all sorts of just bringing horrible viruses and parasites and dirt and germs. And the dogs are bringing in the same thing because they're walking those same streets, especially if like the streets of New York, and it's basically one big doggy bathroom, and they're stepping in that, and then they're coming up, And with more and more people having dogs like just be part of the family and sleep in their beds, I think that's been another thing. I never really realized that walkie paws would be it all year round, because when I launched it for the snow, to the issue I had. And then I discovered there were so many other reasons people were buying them, because our sales, are not as strong in the summer months, but they're still good. And people will buy them for to protect against hot pavements, obviously for the rain, to keep the dog's paws, dry, to keep your house clean, because people are like, you go out for a walk, even if it's just rained or it's a little dewy and wet outside, you'll come home and the dog's paws have mud. So and then there were all the summer allergen issues that I'd never, in fact, I was on a vacation with my dog in Mexico, and I had an experience with, I don't know if you've ever had an experience with foxtails or burrs. Once that, yeah. Customers had said, we're using walkie paws because of the, it's protecting my dog from, I didn't even know what that was. And on this trip, unfortunately, Stir Fry was not wearing the walkie paws. He went running in a bush, came out, he was covered all over his face, all over his paws, everywhere in these sticky things. And it took me like 3 hours to cut them out. And they were like painful. Some of them, they were like really. So there's all the other why people are, would use the product, which is something you wouldn't really think of until you launch it. And then you need to like just really understand your customers and get the feedback. And it's been really interesting. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I think that's such a great point. Like it's easy as an entrepreneur to only view things like, so often. You're a great example of this. You launch something because you saw pain and you solved it for yourself. And then that shifts. And all of a sudden, it's like, there's a lot of other reasons people use this besides the original reason you came up with. And so it can be hard to not get stuck in your own perspective. I think going along with that, one thing I'd love to ask, because you're innovating and coming up with new ideas, I think that's another place that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle. They have this initial idea, and it almost happened in a way that's hard for them to describe. It wasn't something they did consciously, like, well, I did this and then I did this. It's just that's how they viewed it. And then sometimes they almost get the entrepreneurial form of kind of writer's block, like, I don't know what to do next. How have you been able to break through that, get past that, or even have you struggled with that yourself?
I have to a certain extent, although I'm the opposite of that. I'm like, that's what I love doing. I thrive new ideas, and I'm always, even when I was a little girl, I was thinking of, ideas for new products from when I was a kid. So that's really my mindset and my bent. So the products I'm launching now for the fall, one of them also came out of a particular experience where I needed something and I didn't have it. And I can't say what it is, but and it was just and then the minute that idea hit me and I was like, wow, and you could do it another way, I then just went on a mission to get it made and to get it. And now I'm lucky because now I have, the factories in place, and I have, Shopify set up and everything. So it's kind of easy. It's kind of, you just bring the but you do need to sort of, you've got to, have the strength of your courage of your convictions and just move forward with it, because a lot of people will give you a lot of advice not to do things. They'll be like, oh, it's going to cost too much money. It's, the market's already saturated, whatever. So, I mean, I don't know how well all these new products will do. I've launched the Walkie Paws. That was very successful. I have just launched the Bark Pack, and then I have 2 more products coming in the winter, and we'll see. I mean, but I think there's definitely value in trying and not giving up and putting it out there and doing the best you can. And you never know. I mean, you just never know when something's going to really take off. I think in this day and age, it's dependent on a lot of things that are out of your control as well. If something goes viral on TikTok, or you get to the right influencers, or, it's one thing to have a great product. You've just then got to get the product of people. And that's getting more and more difficult now, because everything's more, it's much more saturated. It's expensive to advertise. So that's really the challenge. It's not even the idea. Like, you could have a great idea, but no one would see it, versus having average idea, but getting it in front of everyone. So that for me is the balance, is trying to figure out how to get these brand new, like, exciting products, to people in the right way in this day and age, because it's changing rapidly. It's a new thing. Just kind of keeping up with technology and
all the new things. No, I think that's such a great point. It's really hard because Shopify used to be something that I was talking to some friends who started an e-com company 15 years ago, and they're like, our initial website cost $150,000, and they couldn't do a fraction of what Shopify can do now for $30 a month. And so those like barriers to entry have come down. It's much easier to get an amazing website. You get all this technology, but it also means the barriers of entry came down, and it's a lot easier for people to start something up to compete with you. And so you got to move fast and know how to market and do a lot of these things. So awesome. So many great nuggets of wisdom that you've shared with us. Any call to action? Obviously, people can go check out your website. Any other things you'd love for the listeners to go do?
Sure. I'd love them to look at the website, walkiepaws.com. And your feedback. I love feedback from consumers on anything they like or don't like to do with Walkie Paws, because we always love hearing from our customers. And thank you so much for having me on the show. This was really fun.
Thank you so much for coming. It's been so much fun having you and learning from you. Super excited to check it out, and hope the fans and listeners check out your website. It'd be great.
Great. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thanks, Jay.